Hey guys, today I want to address two comments. Um, the first one is from Jay Sean, and he didn't ask a question. He wrote a comment, and his comment goes, "It doesn't matter how much good Muhammad has done. You cannot ignore the rap sheet of evil. The entire Quran makes a case for itself at the expense of other religions and people. It's a book that absolutely incites hatred and division. On the outside, Islam may appear to be a very beautiful religion, and it's by design, but underneath, I don't know how to pronounce that word, underneath the veneer is something very sinister." This is one of the most, I think, confusing topics regarding Islam and whether it's a peaceful religion or not. And I think it's the very reason why it's so confusing is because people mix up peaceful Islam and peaceful Muslims. It's not the same thing. Muslims are usually, majority of them, are peaceful, obedient citizens. They actually are good people. And you want to be near them, really. My family were good people. The thing is, no matter how good they are, no matter how well they portray Islam and how well they think of Islam, no matter how much they turn Islam into something incredibly sophisticated and just educational or scientific, whatever it is they do, they make it all seem so perfectly peaceful. The fact of the matter is that Islam, as a religion, what Islam teaches, what you see in the scriptures, what the scholars who've studied Islam say, what people who are devoted Muslims who don't, mix Western philosophies, morals, or Christian values into their faith say, what they say, and when you compare these two things, you see that there's a huge difference. You see that, Islam is not peaceful. As a religion, it is not peaceful. There are peaceful verses. Of course there are. I've read them. And it's those verses that I actually presented to people when I wanted to make a case of how peaceful Islam is. But there is a misunderstanding about the concept. The context of that peaceful verse, totally misunderstood. And the violent verses, the verses that show the very essence and purpose of Islam, that's about violence, that's about jihad and things like that, totally is ignored. Or you, as a Muslim, have an excuse for it. And the excuse tends to be that these things were written in a time when they mattered and when they were supposed to be used, these commandments, because there was a time of war. And that, of course, we're not supposed to use these things today. But I think I've already talked about that and explained that you cannot use that argument because it's commandments and it's about people having different values, not about a certain situation. So if you look at Islam per se, you see that it's actually not peaceful. And there's so many good arguments you can present, and I've seen them everywhere. Not only David Wood, just look at every single person who presents actual evidence and hard, true arguments for why Islam isn't peaceful, why it's about violence and such. You can see that they have brought quotations from the Quran and the Hadith. So basically, there's no point sitting here and rambling about those for now. I can eventually give you guys every single thing that I have spoken of that I didn't show any verse to, because I feel like there's so much of it, and it's so easily available that the problem is not that it's not available to you, the evidence. The problem is that you have a problem even approaching the evidence. You have a problem even going into the criticizing Islam. And that's why I'm here. I want to open up that, roadblock for you, so that you can actually approach your faith objectively and look at it for what it is and stop turning it into something that suits you. So no, Islam, if you ask me, is it peaceful? It's not. Muslims are. Muslims mostly, most of them don't, they aren't for terrorism, they aren't for killing people. And I mean, I, as a Muslim, I didn't even want to kill insects. I mean, and I never got into fights, and my whole family was like that. So no, they're not violent people. But their religion is violent, and the problem with being a peaceful person and founding your entire life on a violent religion is that when you're faced with difficulty and oppression, when people are oppressing your religion, or when you are being confronted with critique, or when a Muslim refuses to abide to the rules of Islam, that's when you start seeing the abusive elements coming out. That's when you start seeing that these good people, very peaceful people, they have been corrupted. Their soul has been corrupted by the evil teachings of Islam. You start seeing that there's no unconditional love. You start seeing that they ignore their own family members. They cast them out. They disown them. You have a father who, perhaps out of pure just feeling let down by his daughter for having slept with some man, maybe he gives her a slap in the face, and then he says, well, I was just upset. But all of these evil things, they stem in the faith, in the religion of Islam, and they don't understand that it actually has an impact. It does actually matter where your religion comes from, no matter how peaceful it is for you and what good it makes you do. It matters if it is the religion of Satan or not. It matters if it was a false revelation to Muhammad. It matters if Muhammad wasn't a true prophet to God or not. It does matter. No matter how much of a Quranist you are or peaceful you are, doesn't justify the fact that it's dangerous to have a religion you base your life on that is fake and that is promoting abuse and control, and that allows for violence, especially when you have cases of terrorism and things like that that's happening today. And these people, like ISIS and them, that they're actually referring to Quranic verses, then you really have to, come on. And it doesn't matter if a lot of people say that the whole movement of terrorism and such, that there's some political agenda behind it. This is not relevant, because I'll tell you why. In terms of when we're discussing religion, it's not relevant. Because you have to ask yourself, why is it that, if you're right about this, that there's somebody who's sort of using Islam for their own benefit, why is it that they can use Islam for doing this? Why is it that Islam has teachings and verses that can support this kind of violence? How is it that they can use this in that case? And they can do these things they call jihad, or die for Allah and stuff like that. Why is it that they can do this? Why can't you take a Buddhist and turn that Buddhist into some savage terrorist? There's a reason for it. So perhaps Islam is or has become a tool in today's society. I'm not going to go into politics here. But regardless of whether they do it or not, there's a good reason why they could, even if they did, use Islam in the first place. The second thing I want to address is something that Tudor's Tigers wrote. I like your channel name. And he asked me the following, if it's a guy, I'm not sure. How well known to Muslims are those self-serving and often bizarre revelations from Allah that enable the Prophet to live a comfortable life off of other people? David covers many of these. Why is it so hard to see they were clearly invented? Because first and foremost, Muslims don't even have that kind of picture of Muhammad, that he would do anything for his own self-gain. Muslims, first and foremost, you have to understand that they have already assumed that Muhammad was the true prophet of God, and that he was, the real deal, the one and only prophet that was going to unite everyone, and who was going to be someone who was a good role model for how to behave and act towards your fellow human beings. So they have already assumed that Islam is true. They've assumed that Muhammad is the true prophet of God and that he's actually conveying a real message from God. So, believing in this, when they see these weird verses, I've met Muslims and I've had siblings who've been in discussions with me about this. We've both agreed on that it's strange, the things that are mentioned in these hadiths about Muhammad, that they make him seem like some violent rapist person. However, what we didn't understand is that this is actually the true description of him. This is what he was really like. But what Muslims tend to think is that not that they are invented, these bizarre revelations from Allah, or just how strange the Prophet was, how evil he was. They don't think of it as invented. They see it and they think, there's been somebody has kind of altered what was known of the Prophet. And so these extreme verses or texts talking about him in the hadiths, they are really just these alterations. And ultimately, if you look at the whole thing of the hadith, you see that Muhammad's intentions and his purpose was to kind of teach people how to be diplomatic, how to be flexible, and respect, how to respect your fellow human beings, and how to kind of, it was about a social game, and through this social game being peaceful and teaching the message of peace. So Muslims look at him like some kind of role model, inspiration of how to be diplomatic, how to be sophisticated and humane. And looking at it now, I don't see how they can even derive such a conclusion. But perhaps because of, how he spoke about how you behave, how you talk to people, or don't show up at someone's house. That verse, don't show up at the Prophet's home too early and whatnot. I don't remember it in detail, but they think of this as some kind of teaching of how to be a good citizen, rather than that it was self-serving. So it's this misconception that it's not about what Muhammad wanted for himself, or perhaps Satan trying to tell him to do certain things that would make people evil. But it's not about that. They see it as that he was trying to be a good role model for social interaction, how to behave in social dynamics, and how to make God come through in that. And also that they assume already that he is the true prophet. So if he's the true prophet, he can't possibly be self-serving. If you see verses where there's violence or a self-serving prophet, then that must be the parts that have been altered. That's how the Muslim thinks about that. Thank you guys for watching. I love having these videos made, because it's so important that you guys kind of enter the Muslim's mind and see what is really going on. Why is it so hard for them to see the truth? And I hope that somehow my videos help you understand that. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.